Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. It's a beautiful Friday morning, the first day of September 2023. It's official. We have entered the Ember month, and we are grateful for the journey that has brought us from January to August, every of the experience put together. But we are really grateful for you, our very esteemed viewers, for being a part of Rise and Shine since January up till today. Today is the 1st of September, and this is a good way to say a very rise and shine happy new month to you. My name is Uyai Aneka, and it's a great delight to be here this morning doing this with you this blessed Friday morning.
And I am Francis Oyima there. It's glad to have you joined us. Happy new month. I do hope that this month will bring us a lot of blessings, a lot of happiness, fulfillment, and of course, the myths surrounding Ember Month will not be visible this year and the rest of the years. Remember also that your mindset determines what happened, and what you profess is actually going to be what manifests in your life. So while people are talking about the Ember Month and the negativity that comes with the Ember Month, please ensure that you keep your mind off those negativities, because Ember months are just like every other month from January up to August that we just finished. So it's all about maintaining a positive mindset. It's all about keeping your cool and knowing that it's just another month and you have to get by it doing things the right way. Of course, it's another day for us to talk Nigeria and things happening across the world, and bring you up to date with these latest developments. But for me this morning, if I were to start, I think I would start still with the military junta in Niger that is still, to a large extent, dominating conversations. This morning, we see a kind of a rebuttal from the ECOWAS saying there's not been talks about the military junta's transition period. But of course, we know that as at the last time, the military junta had demanded for 3 years transition period, while the ECOWAS leadership had said they were not in support of that. Yesterday we saw that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu spoke about the ECOWAS standpoint, demanding a shorter transition period of 9 months, as allegedly proposed by Abdul Salami Abubakar, who has been the mediator between ECOWAS and the military junta in Niger. But of course, the question of whether the military junta in Niger will accept the 9-month transition is a question that ECOWAS is still, a little bit uptight by the fence about it, because the military junta is yet to accept or to speak in regards to the 9 months period as proposed by Abdul Salami Abubakar. But in the event that the 9 months is being accepted, we are looking at the capability of the military junta, the willingness on the part of the military junta to be able to hand over power within that stipulated 9 months. Of course, we know it happened in July, so like 9 months we're talking about approximately by April, May next year, 2024. That's part of the conversation that will get my interest. And of course, the development from the president of Cameroon and his counterpart, who, by the way, the Africans' longest and oldest serving presidents, who are still, doing everything within their powers to ensure they do not vacate the seat.
Well, those are really strong stories, but let's go do a quick swap to, flash news. This cool stories are very paramount on the front burners of several conversations. We are looking at all the indices involved. What exactly is going on in Africa? Like he said, ECOWAS has come out to debunk any kinds of conversation around a transition. But these are conversations that we can go into in-depthly, because all eyes are literally on Africa at the moment. We have, Western leaders calling and trying to see, condemning the whole process hitherto. But of course, let's look at our very first flash story this morning, and that story will be that already a landowner in the FCT Abuja has already dragged Nyesom Wike to court. It's been barely a few days into him being the Federal Capital Territory Minister. Of course, like we remember once he got into office, it was with a loud mouth open, and we already see that an Abuja landowner, Alhaji Mohammed Ibrahim Kamba, has charged the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, and the Director of Development Control to court for demolishing his building under construction at plot 226 Cotonou Street, Wuse Zone 6, Abuja. Now, this was contained in an official statement on Thursday by his lawyer, Okechukwu C. Uju Azoji, as an associate of Festus Kiamo's chambers. Now, the statement read, on Monday, August 29, 2023, our client was greeted with the news of demolishing his structure under construction at plot 226 Cotonou Street, Wuse Zone 6, Abuja. In the interview granted, of course, shortly by the Director of Development Control, he stated, we demolished the duplex because somebody built on someone else's land without a valid title. Remember very strongly, Francis, now we had this conversation about the particular multi-million duplex that was demolished by the FCTA because it said it belonged to a particular monarch, of which these other elites forcibly took over the land and built on it. But just a few days in, barely 48 hours into Nyesom Wike being the minister of the FCT, we saw that building coming down, and one would say this was to be expected. Of course, we see one of the names being called, Alhaji Mohammed Ibrahim, being taking Nyesom Wike to court already with regards to that demolition.
Well, as far as the Minister Wike is concerned and the move to reposition the Federal Capital Territory, take it back to the master plan of the FCT, a lot of things are expected. And one of the first things that is being expected as resistance on the part of the elite will be the instrumentality, or attempting to use the instrumentality of the court to cause injunctions or to cause the minister from doing the needful, which of course will go down to demolition of these properties who are in the ways or in places they ought not to have been, or contravening the rules and the laws of the FCT as far as the master plan is concerned. That was expected. Of course, the legal tussles are going to be a regular one for the Minister Nyesom Wike, and I do hope that, being a barrister himself, he has long before now braced up for the legal challenges that would come. I'd like to believe that he must have taken a critical look at the different, documents, available that should make one entitled to using a property or owning a land, and then having the right to erect a property on it, and what kind of property is being erected. Because it's also one thing to own a land, is another thing to know where that land, the location of the area that land is located, and then what structure you're erecting. You might own a land in an area that was supposed to be a green area, and then you go ahead and erect a residential building. Of course, that property would have to go down. But if you own a property in a green area, and then maybe you're using that green area to grow trees, flowers and stuff that are in line with the the master plan, the initial plan for the area, then you can be excused for it. I guess you can be excused. But we should be expecting a lot more legal tussles ranging from the elites in the FCT against the minister, and of course the federal government by extension. But be that as it may, I'm sure these litigations are not going to be a hindrance to Minister Nyesom Wike, because he has the backing. Let's hope he has the backing of the the FCT's administration guidelines and rules. He has the backing of the master plan, and of course, we know that our legal system works basically with evidences that are put forth. So if the minister has enough evidence to show forth that these people, their properties were in the wrong places, had no right to be where they were, then of course the court is just going to be another place where the minister is further given an extra boost, because the more case he wins in court, the better, or the more the more emboldened Minister Nyesom Wike is going to be. But also, on the other side of the conversation, I think it's about time the elite also learn to understand that everything is not about muscles and flexing their contact and connect and everything is not about always heading to court and wanting to win. It's about time we get to a place in this country where people realize that regardless of the powers that you think you have, regardless of, the blessings that God or Allah, whichever God you pray to, has bestowed upon you, it is not to intimidate, it is not to victimize, it is not to manipulate, the society in your favor at the detriment of the generality of the populace. And once we get to that point, I think we'll begin to see a lot more seamless development cuts across the respective strata of the society.
Well, those are the very important things that you have said. The elites need to know that this society in this country has to go on and benefit everyone else. But like you said, upon getting to the courts now, investigations, must be made to ascertain who exactly owns this land, because we see the fact that Mohammed, of course, has, brought out some details in his own favor, enunciating how that, that parcel of land belongs to him. Now, he said the plot itself belonged to the predecessor and title of our client, Alhaji Mohammed Ibrahim Kamba, who had built a guest house, popularly called, of course, there's a name there, on the plot where he was collecting rent for upwards of 25 years. So it's more like, Mohammed has been the one in ownership of that, particular plot of land upwards of 25 years before selling and handing over to a client in 2019. Now, Alhaji Mohammed Ibrahim Kamba in turn bought the property during the lifetime of the original allotee. Remember that this land is in tussle between the late Oyebade Lipide. Of course, he himself was a monarch, so this case is going to go back and forth. At the end of the day, we are going to have to pull out papers, we are going to pull out documents for exchange. Don't even forget, Francis, that we are living in a day and time that people, what's the balance now? People scam people with regards to, all of these kinds of things, plots of land and also on the rest. You see in situations where a particular plot of land has been sold to like 5 people at the end of the day. So yes, he has taken Nyesom Wike, the Minister of FCT, to court. Let's see, what the investigations will turn out to be. At the end of the day, it is the elite versus, the FCTA at this point. But then we're just going to move to our very next story this morning. And this one is, as part of our flash news, we are seeing the fact that APGA presidential candidates and others are seeking for appointments under the cabinet of, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. When we see these kinds of seasons coming back and forth, you're also going to hear when, whoever emerges says, we are going to work collectively with every other person who aspired for, different seats at the table. But now we're seeing APGA presidential candidate is saying he's interested in being one of, the appointees under the Tinubu-led administration. Of course, this will mean a lot of things in the polity of the country. Let's, now, it's not just the APGA opposition leader. We're also seeing that of course, this plea was made when the candidates under the aegis of Forum of Concerned Presidential Candidates paid a courtesy visit to the national chairman of the ruling All Progressives Congress, Dr. Abdullahi Ganduje, at the party secretariat in Abuja. Now, of course, we saw the presidential candidate of Action People's Party, Charles Nadi, his counterpart in National Rescue Movement, Felix Osakwe, All Progressives Grand Alliance flag bearer, that's APGA now, Professor Peter Omedi, Action Democratic Party Vice Presidential candidate Dr. Ode Udo, and the leader of the team, Adewale Adeogun. Of course, meeting with the leadership of the APC. Now, we saw them tender that particular request. Of course, we see that they are not known to practice politics without bitterness, stressing that it was evident by their refusal to jump the bandwagon of candidates dragging the president to the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. So, of course, there's going to be a conversation that puts them on a favorable end with the president. I mean, look at us. We didn't, join the bandwagon to take the president or, INEC for that matter, the proceedings of the just concluded 2023 cycle of elections to court. So on that premise, look into this and let's see how we can, become a part of the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We must first of all establish the fact that this on its, in the first place is not a bad request. Because if people had what it took to buy, what's the name now, to buy forms to go for presidential, to bid for the presidential seat, then we must believe that they have what it takes. They have something to offer to the country. Yes, it will be a great idea if it's agreed upon to see a collation of some of these minds and some of these visions across party lines coming together, to foster the growth of the country across different sectors.
Well, political experts would say when Nigerians' democracy, when Africans' democracy is mature enough, then we would be seeing appointment of people in government cuts across party lines. But until we get to that point, it would just be a matter of how influential, how impactful the individual has been, and what muscles, what strings, what personality the individual carries, as opposed to the goodwill of the powers or the party in power. I know that Ahmed Bola Tinubu during his campaigning period did say he's coming to save Nigeria, and he wouldn't mind, extending the olive branch to everybody. And of course, we saw him actually do that after his emergence, extending the olive branch and calling on all presidential candidates to, join forces with him to build Nigeria. Of course, that was a great call. Nigerians commended the president-elect, now the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, for making that call. But of course, there was also concern as to whether President Ahmed Bola Tinubu truly meant what he said when he called on other contestants to come join forces with him to build and reposition Nigeria. It's a great call. It's a great move by the colleagues of presidential candidates. But then, that different twist to it. Why are they coming out openly to act? We know that the president had thrown that open initially. We've not seen it happen. First explanation, what might possibly think of, would be the fact that, okay, the president has extended the olive branch, had called on the candidates to come join forces with him to build Nigeria and reposition the country. And that hasn't happened within the span of the numbers of, appointees that the president has so far made within his, first 100 days in office. And of course, it raises also another question. Will we even see the president bringing in other people outside the party, apart from Nyesom Wike, that is of the PDP? We've not seen anybody within these administration so far given an appointment that is not of the APC. Across the MDAs, the different MDAs, the boards that are being set up, it still goes down to people who have been loyal to the APC at the federal and the state levels. These are the people who are getting the appointment. So if you're not within the ranks and files, if you're not a loyalist of the APC or to somebody within the APC family who is now, at the arms of affairs calling the shot, then appointment is not your portion. So as much as most Nigerians would love to see President Ahmed Bola Tinubu appoint or make more appointment in the event that there is need for more across party lines, it is also a very dicey situation, because they say two masters or two captains can, steer the same ship. There might be that likely fear on the part of the APC that maybe they have too much of the oppositions in this present cabinet or in their cabinet, might be giving too much powers to the opposition, of course, jeopardizing the chances in future elections. But be that as it may, when Nigeria's democracy is mature, like it's been posited by many political affairs analysts, probably would see governance being distinguished from electioneering or campaigning. And in that instance, we'll get to see all of the fine brains, because literally everybody who comes out to contest for the top, job in the country has something to offer, has blueprints, had what they felt could be done differently to transform the economy, to solve the problem of insecurity, to solve unemployment, to fix the medical sector, to fix electricity, to fix the MSME sector. every of these people, each one of them had a blueprint, had a master plan, had a manifesto they sold to Nigeria. So it would be wise in the interest of Nigerians to also harness whether or not you want to give them appointment, whether or not you want to form what is it called again? They are coming under the ages of concerned, former presidential candidates.
Yeah.
Whatever. You can have that as a forum that you go to for counseling. You pick from the brains and then, of course, have it fine-tuned to what you feel or what is in line with your agenda for the people. And then we get to see, different variations of possible solutions being tested. And eventually, whichever one works, we get to use it in Nigeria.
Just to further give some perspective to, their plea, they are asking through the, APC National Chairman Ganduje now that they be given they be given presence in campaign councils for the elections coming up on November 11 in 3 states. So we are looking at Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi State. So these former presidential candidates are asking that a slot in the campaign council for the governorship elections be made available to them. Now, if we look into what exactly they intend to do as campaign council members, for the forthcoming off-season election on November 11, we need to see how this, interplays and relates with them being former presidential candidates. Of course, they intend to submit 2 names to the chairman, and they're asking Ganduje to lead the way for them to meet with the president so that they can have this conversation and place, some other demands on the table. Of course, Ganduje assured them that the delegation will be presented to the president. So having a place on the campaign council towards the 3 states that are going to be involved in the off-cycle election. How are we going to interpret this? What's their influence as former presidential candidates on the off-season elections in these 3 states? That's going to be a really big question because, more details are not given. When you are on the campaign council of these 3 states, what influences and what decisions is this going to pull through for the various parties? And is this, of course, we're also looking at the fact that they are not APC members. You're looking at APCA, you're looking at other parties. Now that you're asking for a place on the campaign, are you asking for a space on the campaign council of just the APC across these 3 states, or what exactly is the pursuit?
Well, I think basically what these top politicians are looking for is an opportunity to observe what is going to happen in the off-season elections, make contributions to what is likely going to happen, and of course, in extension, also make contributions to the electoral umpire. Because at this point in time, remember, just after the elections, the review meeting held and conducted by the INEC, chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, and the RECs across the state and different stakeholders, there were a lot of issues, that INEC enlisted as part of the challenges they saw during the just concluded national election. That's, of course, beside the report by the EU Election Observers Mission in Nigeria for the 2023 general election. So when you put all of the flashpoints, the red spots areas that were identified by the relevant government agencies, both INEC and the international observers, and then you put those challenges also that were registered by Nigerians, and of course Nigerians seek to see a variation, or should we call it an improvement from what was seen during the national election. It is very critical to also have these people maybe join forces and see how the off-season election is going to be run. Are we going to see an improvement from what we saw during the just concluded elections? Are INEC prepared and better positioned to correct some of the anomalies, some of the wrongs, some of the challenges that was witnessed during the just concluded election? So it goes back to wanting to still remain relevant. It goes back to wanting to be part of the system. It goes back to staying close to the corridors of powers. It goes back to maintaining a close tab on the opposition party, the leading APC in the country. And of course, it also offers the opportunity for these individuals to also contribute their quota. I mean, from the off-season elections, we definitely will know if INEC is committed to, changing the narrative, if INEC is committed to correcting the wrongs that were visible during the elections, if INEC would do anything differently, and if they're able to also contribute their quota to helping the electoral umpire reposition itself, I think it would be to the greatest advantage of Nigerians.
Definitely, definitely. Let's move on to our very last flash story for this morning. There seems to be a fresh bout of conversations going on between the AGF and the ad hoc committee that is, of course, investigating some levels of misappropriation of funds within agencies. We see the fact that the AGF and CBN governor have been threatened with an arrest for shunning reps probe. Of course, this conversation now, we see the fact that the ad hoc committee investigating non-remittance of money to the National Housing Fund and utilization of funds from 2011 till date. On Thursday, of course, they were invited yesterday, and now they have received a warning against failing to appear, and the ad hoc committee has said with this failure, if they do not appear by Thursday next week, they will be subpoenaed. Of course, the committee is consequently given till next week, Thursday, to appear and answer questions with regards to non-remittance of money to the National Housing Fund. Now, I think the ad hoc committee, of course, we're expecting to see Dr. Oluwatoyin Medin, who is the Accountant General of the Federation, of course, and the acting governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Folashon Dunshumbi, I beg your pardon, to appear before the panel. Now, questions are being asked. From 2011 to date, there are certain funds that were meant to be used for housing-related issues and other things. Come before the panel, explain where are these monies, where were they invested. You haven't, remitted within this state. But the ad hoc committee is pointing out the fact that every single time CEOs, of different agencies are invited to appear before panels, they're given several kinds of excuses, making international trips and therefore being unavailable to answer these questions.
It's a crazy scenario beginning again to play out in Nigeria with CEOs, people entrusted with government offices who refuse to understand that they were elected, appointed into those positions to serve. I mean, we saw a lot of power tussles between heads of MDAs and the National Assembly when it comes to appearing before the House ad hoc committee investigating or probing one issue or the other. It's very unprofessional, to say the least, for the civil servants to contribute their quota to the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. But of course, this money gets stuck somewhere without being remitted to the account that it was meant for. Housing is one of the biggest challenges, and mortgage loans given to civil servants in Nigeria has been a bit of a big contending issues. You hear from challenges of over interest or interest rate on the part of the banks who are used to disburse these loans to the beneficiaries to humongous figures in terms of interest rates that are being placed on the loan, and then a lot of other underground fees also attached to it that this civil servant would wake up later on after they must have gotten the loan to discover. So a lot of discrepancies, a lot of corruption allegations ongoing within the housing scheme for civil servants to ensure everybody can access affordable housing. So of course we know that within the course of the week, a representative of the IPPIS actually appeared, which necessitated the House committee now calling for the AGF and the CBN governor's appearance, of course. Like the House ad hoc committee has said, it's crazy that at every point in time when a top brass member of the MDAs are to appear before the National Assembly, there is always an excuse. And it begs for the question, why Are they always traveling out of the country? What do they travel out of the country for? Is it in line with the jobs they're meant to do, or we are having people just waste away public funds for foreign travels that will bring no benefit, will bring no gain to Nigeria and Nigerians? I do like to believe that the National Assembly is serious. Nigerians will want to believe that they are serious at this point, and will go past just issuing threats of arrest to actually seeing these respective probes get to a point where people who are found culpable, people who are implicated in the probe, get properly investigated by the relevant anti-graft agencies, and those who are found wanting, even while still serving, gets arrested, prosecuted. The moment we get to see that, then we'll know that the National Assembly is serious, because I think Nigerians have had enough of National Assembly members inviting one government official or the other, and then they refusing to appear. I mean, if you have nothing to hide, it would just be a matter of honoring an invitation and explaining yourself. And if, you know, the National Assembly is not okay with your explanation, they ask questions and they're not okay, of course the anti-graft agencies are there for further probing and investigations on the respective matters being handled. So I think it's a show of disrespect for the Nigerian Constitution. It's a show of disrespect for the National Assembly. It's a show of unprofessionalism on the part of the leaders. A show of I don't even know how to even phrase that. It's completely a display of incompetence on the part of these leaders who are trusted with such responsibilities to not show up. Because if anything goes wrong within the ministries that you are saddled with the responsibility, you should be in the best position to come out and tell Nigerians, tell the National Assembly what they need to know. Now, in the event that you are not the one who is culpable, then if there are people within the ranks and file of your ministries or departments or agencies that have been implicated, then you let them go in for it. Not trying to shield, not trying to run away. Of course, that in no way is in the interest of anybody.
Well, the fact that you know, this keeps happening, because another issue that has been highlighted is, apart from, you know, just inviting you to come for these probes, sometimes we still have the CEOs sending, you know, their representatives to come and answer these questions. Of course, we see the ad hoc committee saying they are not going to entertain any representatives coming to answer the questions that have been brought forward by the ad hoc committee. They are looking to see the Accountant General of the Federation and also the acting governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria to be able to tell, you know, and explain some of the discrepancies. But like, you know, would say this is rather a bigger question on the culture of transparency in our public offices, in our agencies, and by the minders of this system. Because like you rightly said, Francis, if you have nothing to hide and if you have your papers intact from 2011 to date, you'll just be able to bring it and say, okay, with these funds that we appropriated for housing, this and this and what we did with it, this is how much was spent on the project, and this is how much we have remitted over time with regards to, you know, those projects. So let's see what next week Thursday holds. Will the acting CBN governor appear before the ad hoc committee, and will the Accountant General of the Federation appear before the, you know, committee to answer these questions with regards to non-remittances of housing funds? But of course, we have several banks in the, you know, in all of this. We also have banks to be invited, and some banks have also been highlighted as not being part of that. But they're saying, going forward, the ad hoc committee standing on probes are saying they are not going to take lightly any absentee banks any longer with regards to probes. Let's not also forget, if you take your mind back to the cash crunch season, Francis, there were lots of issues with banks, and there are if you, as at the last check, if I remember, it stood at several millions of naira that people lost at that time with regards to online transactions. People's money just went, you know, could not be traceable on the internet and all of those kinds of things. I mean, we still have reports of people just sitting in their homes and then, you know, their accounts are swiped clean. You cannot explain what happens. You get to a bank and ask what exactly is happening with this bank. I cannot trace my... It's the bank official that will tell you that they cannot cannot trace your money. But when an activity happens on on account, there are proceedings, there are procedures that should make okay, this money was moved from point A to point B. But we begin to see a lot of what would I call it, lack of transparent activities in our banking system. So we also see that several banks have been invited by the ad hoc committee to answer different questions with regards to, of course, banking activities. But let's see how this affects the country in the overall. But let's look at allocations. NAETI has called out some of the funds that have been shared between the local government, state, and the Federal Capital Territory in the last 6 months of the year across the 3 tiers of government. How much are we looking at? 4.37 trillion naira from the Federation account as statutory revenue allocations between January and June of 2023.
I think it's a lot more needs to be desired with the dwindling oil prices and the loss of revenue in Nigeria, with the way the petroleum subsidy removal has hit us. A lot has changed in terms of the allocation. We've seen an increase in what the respective, the tiers of government take home from the federal to the states to the local government. But of course, this has also influenced the conversations being about the local government autonomy. Now we know that the 3 tiers of government in the first and second quarter of 2023 stood at over 2.32 trillion naira and 2.04 trillion respectively. The quarterly review by the NEITI revealed that inflows into the Federation account in the second quarter of 2023 declined a little bit by 23%, and this affected the distributable revenue, which fell by 12% when compared with the total revenue disbursed in the first quarter. Now, each tier of government received more than 1 trillion naira over the 6 months period. Of course, that's as stated by the agency. And the breakdown of the revenue received showed that the Federation, talking about the federal government, received about 1.78 trillion naira, or 40.7%, while the state government received 1.5 trillion naira, 34.5%, and the local government councils 1.08 trillion, that's 24.8% of the total distributable revenue for the period. Of course, comparative analysis of the total allocation on a year-on-year basis in the corresponding quarters of 2022 and 2023 showed that the distributable revenue of 4.366 trillion naira shared by the 3 tiers of government between January and June was higher by about 16.7% from about 4.05 trillion naira shared in the corresponding period in 2022. So it seems the fuel subsidy removal by Ahmed Bola Tinubu had a little impact on the revenue taken home by the respective tiers of government. And I guess this gives credence to what the presidency keeps saying, that Nigerians should be a little bit patient with the federal government of Ahmed Bola Tinubu. In the long run, the effect of the fuel subsidy removal, will be felt and better experienced by Nigerians.
Well, the numbers are, as expected, will be going back and forth. We see a lot of indices and a lot of things affecting the income of the country as of the time. Are dwindling, OPEC quota. We are also seeing the way forex is trading, which is affecting foreign direct investment and even internally generated funds in the country. So of course the numbers are going to drop. 12% decline from what was allocated in the first quarter of the year as a result of some of these impact by economic policies that have been brought to bear by the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. At this time, when we also see NAETI giving these kinds of numbers, is also for the federal government to see comparatively how can we do better in the next quarter. Of course, this is the fourth quarter of the year as we go. When you analyze these numbers as brought to bear by NAETI at this time, what can the federal government do differently? Because when you say that allocations given to the 3 tiers of government has dropped by 12%, it means that with a drop in the allocation, certain impacts are expected when these monies fall back to the state government or to the local government levels. We're going to have to see certain kinds of deductions made in, money disbursed to different capital projects and salary structures within the state or the local government levels. When, for instance, your state received 100, let's say 100 billion naira as allocation, and then it drops by 12%, what that 12% would cover naturally in the state or the, the local government agencies now is also going to drop. So we are going to begin, and then when you go around the conversation of are we even transparent with the dealings of this allocation, that's another thing. When it now drops by 12%, and this is for the first 6 months of the year, what happens to the fourth quarter of the year as we are going so far? So of course, it's also important. Part of the strongest ways we can know if we are growing as a nation or making progress and how we can bring, solutions that are fabricated to meet needs is working with data. And NIET providing us with this data also, and with these numbers, breaking it down month on month, how the allocations are done, what the impacts and the rise and falls have been so far, will help the federal governments, more appropriately plan to handle the financial and economic upturns of the country.
Well, I do hope that, in line with what Ahmed Bola Tinubu has said, we'll get to see these federation account allocation on a monthly basis gets to be on the increase rather than on a decrease going forward. But moving away from that, the Nigerian Navy has allegedly aborted an attempted oil theft at Lekki waters and arrested 4 men identified as men at Tantita Security Service, owned by a Niger Delta ex-militant leader, government Ekpemopolo, popularly known as Tompolo. They were arrested by men of the Nigerian Navy stationed at Fob Lekki at Waterways Re the Itoku community, Lekki, after the residents of the area raised the alarm following gunshots from the waterside. Now, while parading the suspect on Wednesday, the commander of the NNS, Beecroft, Commodore Kolawole Ogutunga, said they were arrested while they were attacking a local from whom they tried stealing a boat engine. Okay. Oguntunga said in a swift response to a distress call, the Nigerian Navy station at Fob Lekki foiled an attempted oil theft operation on the waterways near Itolu community, Lekki in Lagos State. Okay. Now that's all the way from Niger Delta to Lagos State. The incident occurred in the early hours of August 29, 2023, when local news reported gunshots in the vicinity of the community. Now, reviewing the information, naval patrol teams immediately launched a response operation. Upon arrival at the scene, the naval team met 4 individuals dressed in black polo shirts with Tantita inscribed on the back, trying to recover a dismantled outboard engine from a local. The team recovered the engine and apprehended the 4 employees. Of course, there are different conversations to this. We know that Tompolo has been under the payroll of the federal government. It's 2 sides to the conversation. First, these could actually be men under the Tompolo security outfit who are not on their official duty, but rather doing the personal, runs as the case may be. On the other side, it could also be that they are on duty, but we have to watch and see how this would unfold, because for the longest time we've seen Tompolo talking tough. We've seen Tompolo, raising the eyebrows as far as oil theft is concerned. We've seen scenarios where Tompolo actually led security forces to where oil criminals are, resident and their activities are being, exposed to the authorities. So it's ironical to now see the same outfit, the same men who are protecting or who have been employed to protect the oil, rigs and ensure that oil theft is not, happening, actually become the perpetrators of the very crimes that were being contracted to prevent from happening. We cannot rule out the fact that in every 12 there must be a Judas. So 2 conversations still remains. Were they acting on official capacity? That's a question. Or were they acting on their personal capacities while brandishing the, the identity of the security outfit.
There's a lot to look into, that looking at their pictures this morning, of course, all aged between 28 and 40. We are looking at how this impacts. First of all, why this is going to be a really serious issue is, the personality of Tompolo. Even in the advent of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, we have heard Tompolo make a lot of noise. In terms of, he's back in the Tinubu-led administration, this, that, all of the energy, some of the workouts he has staged in the last 2 months, the conversations that he has held down, the things he has said he will not tolerate, and the ones he's tolerating. So, when you see that a firm that has been, entrusted with making sure that oil theft is not even a case in the Niger Delta region are now highlighted to be ones participating in, further reading us of, our crude in the country. Now that will be a problem, but some of the concerns and points you have raised are some of the most valid ones. Let's not forget that individuals can be very funny. These 4 individuals might have been looking for a way to make their own off earnings as aside what the organization is known for, because if you are going to be involved in going for stealing oil, for that matter, are you really going to go there, dressed in your Tantita uniform to make it very obvious that the same people who are meant to be guarding our pipelines are the same people that are reading us of that? 2 things can also be said, of course. When you see them with those uniforms, you will just naturally assume, they are the pipeline watchdogs, so you will not really pay attention to whether they are going to steal or whether they are going to safeguard. So there's a lot of conversation around this. As expected, the Navy has arrested them, and we of course will keep fingers crossed to see what the investigations are going to turn out. The likes of Tompolo, who is the leader of this particular security firm that watches over the pipelines in the Niger Delta, what is going to be Tompolo's response to this particular activity now where his firm has been highlighted? Of course, we see that they've already come out, the firm has already come out to react. First of all will be to distance itself from that particular activity, but upon investigations, what more will be revealed with regards to this? There's been a lot of activity in the past weeks, of course, to clamp down on oil theft in the country. Arrests have been made, vessels have been burned, but we need to see how this will traverse into stronger conversations where we see our OPEC quota increasing and our oil output getting better. But that's definitely where we need to put a pause to these stories this morning and head straight to Mary Joseph, who's on standby to bring us the news brief. When we return, there's much more to talk about and Rise and Shine, so to stay with us.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you
with some of the killings he did?
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters counsel is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my lord.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
One truth.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
heads of state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover from the lapses in counting.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum, live from Uyo. My name is Mary Joseph. We begin the news brief with a report that President Bola Tinubu on Thursday suggested that 9 months is enough for the Niger military junta to return the country to civilian rule after seizing power from President Mohamed Bazoum on July 26. Tinubu said this when he received the Nigerian Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs, led by the Sultan of Sokoto, His Excellency, Eminence Mohammed Said Abubakar III at the State House. According to the Nigerian leader, who is also the chairman of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, if Nigeria could successfully return to democracy in 1999 through a 9-month program by General Abdusalami Abubakar, there was no reason such could not be replicated by Niger coup leaders. According to a statement by his spokesperson, Ajuri Ngelale, the ECOWAS chief says sanctions imposed on Niger Republic won't be lifted without positive adjustment by the military junta. Meanwhile, human rights lawyer Femi Falana SAN says the high level of poverty on the continent is responsible for the wave of coup in Africa. He spoke at a Nigerian Labour Congress NLC National Symposium held in Abuja on Thursday. Falana accused Nigeria's ruling class of taking the people for granted. According to him, despite the poverty in the country, the National Assembly allocated billions to itself. The theme of the symposium was Nigerian economy and the crisis of survival, robbing the rich to pay the poor. Away from that, the Minister of Works, Dave Umahi, has said that the administration of President Bola Tinubu is committed to the construction of roads that will be durable for as long as 50 years. Umahi disclosed this during his visit to Ogun State. Umahi, however, while speaking when he received and visited Governor of the state, Prince Dakwa Biodun, at his Okemosan office in Abeokuta, said he was in the state to see for himself the state of the federal roads and see what could be done to make them motorable. We head straight now to Africa, where Niger's new military rulers have stripped France's ambassador of diplomatic immunity and ordered police to expel him, according to a letter seen Thursday by the AFP. A move that ratchets up tensions with the country's traditional ally. The envoy no longer enjoys the privileges and immunities attached to his status as member of the diplomatic personnel in the French embassy, according to their letter dated Tuesday to the Foreign Ministry in Paris. They, however, said that his diplomatic cards and visas and those of the members of his family have been cancelled. The police have been instructed to proceed to his expulsion. It said that it moves up a coup in the troubled Sahel city on July 26 that toppled a close French ally, President Mohamed Bazoum. And finally, in sport, Fulham and Everton have reached an agreement for the transfer of the Nigeria international, who is now discussing personal terms with the cottagers ahead of his trip to London. It will be his keen on moving to Caravan Cottage, hence the player agreed personal terms should not be an issue. The Toffees have already agreed to end their association with the former Arsenal winger a year before the expiration of his contract in exchange for €22 million. Fulham have offered it will be a 5-year contract that will keep him in the English capital until June 30th, 2023. We'll have details of this and many more in our news of 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's get back to Rise and Shine, where we have Francis and Oyai on standby. Do have a wonderful morning.
As of state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover from the lapses in counting.
Glad to welcome you back. It's still Rise and Shine coming to you live from here, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, and we encourage you to follow us across social media platforms, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTV.ng. This morning on Talking Nigeria, we started off a conversation with the demolition where the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, is already being brought to court over the house that were brought down. Of course, we moved from there to the House ad hoc committee probing the funds for housing in Nigeria that is currently threatening to issue a arrest warrant for the CBN governor and, of course, the Accountant General of the Federation. We also saw the respective leaders across party lines paying a court visit to the chairman of the APC, of course, soliciting for a meeting with the President Ahmed Bola Tinubu towards putting forward their plea of being appointed into the election council for the off-season elections that are being planned in the country, and of course also declaring their intention and willingness to work with the present administration given appointive positions. We move from there to talk about the allocation where the federal states have taken in 4.37 trillion naira in the last 6 months. And of course, we've seen a significant increment when compared to 2022. And it seems the Ahmed Bola Tinubu's fuel subsidy removal policy is yielding increase, as the presidency had said. We wrapped up our conversation with oil theft, where we've seen the Navy arrest some main of a security outfit. Of course, we see the development of the fight against oil theft in Nigeria. The conversation about the Nigerian Navy doing a lot more than just arresting or boarding of vessels allegedly laden with crude oil, actually saving this crude oil, and of course prosecuting people caught in the process or implicated and found guilty before a court competent jurisdiction when it comes to oil theft in Nigeria. That's a bit of a summary for the conversations we've had this morning. We're moving over to Delhi Spotlight.
Right, just before we go on Daily Spotlight, I'd just like to retract. I was making an analogy, but then I now realized I was mixing the person of Tom Polo and Asari Dokubo up. So no, apologies for that mix-up there. I was talking about someone who's been embroiled in saying he's backing up the Tinubu-led administration. That is Asari Dokubo, and that's not Tom Polo. I thought it was important to make that differentiation there, so that we do not run with the wrong information with regards to the personality of Tom Polo and the security fit for that matter. So that was Asari Dokubo. But of course, like you said, arresting these persons that were caught perpetrating that evil, when it is their firm that is given the responsibility of safeguarding pipelines. Let's see what the Navy and the security agencies make out of it. But just so to put that there right, let's move down to Daily Spotlight, where we bring you information from the front pages of our national dailies. Of course, on Daily Spotlight this morning, we are taking a quick swipe at the front pages of our national dailies. And our first paper will be the Nigerian Tribune. What are the stories here for us this morning? Kiamo suspends Nigeria Air Project concession of airports. We also see here, says suspension stays until all processes allegedly non-transparent are reviewed. President briefed, directs international airlines to relocate to new terminal of MMIA from October 1. Page 12 is where you can find details. AU suspends Gabon after coup. Rwanda, Cameroon reshuffle military. Niger junta orders police to expel French ambassador. Page 4 is where we have the details. Police arrest owner of dogs that mauled child to death in Osun State. Pages 23. Like every time we say, please be careful with your pets. It might be a pet to you, but not a pet to another person. Well, very sad story there. Niger, developments in Gabon have confirmed my fear, says Tinubu, page 23. We also see here this morning, Osun APC suspends another 26 loyalists of Aregbesola. Page 25 is where you can find details. PDP Southwest National Vice Chairman, all eyes on Makinde Adeleke over Adawundo's replacement. Page 3 is where you can find details. Ogun Assembly summons Accountant General JAAC committee members over alleged local government fund diversion. We also see here 7 councillors suspended Jebu East local government chairman who accused Abiodun of fund diversion for financial misappropriation. Case against me baseless, says chairman. Page 8 is where you can find details. The very last story here says Delta Guba Appeal Court orders election petition tribunal to retry LP candidates petition. Pages 23 is where you can find details, and that's all we have on the front page of the Tribune.
Next up this morning is the front page of Daily Trust newspaper. The kicker there says palliatives rise price spikes as federal government, state suppliers mop up markets. Of course, we have the rider there, 50 kg bag records 10,000 naira increase in 10 days. Supplies depleted by high demand, traders inadequate paddy, poor yield responsible, millers, and of course prime anchors shortchange government, AFAN, presidency, Nema Moons. That's on page 4 of Daily Trust this morning. We also see Niger coup, Tinubu asks Sultan to return to Niamey. That's on page 3 of Daily Trust. Federal government shows Lagos Airport's old terminal October 1st suspends Nigeria Air. That's on page 6. We also see Bois Group to increase cement production. That's on page 20. Job racketeering, polyrectors deny bribing reps panel as committee threatens legal action. That's on page 11. Tiku to African leaders focus on disease that birds cause, not symptoms. Of course, that's on page 30. The last story before we leave, 4 ex-presidential candidates visit Ganduje, 6 appointment. And Kanu Nexim signed $2 billion MOU on resuscitating export-oriented industries. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Daily Trust this morning.
Moving on from the Daily Trust, we're looking at the Nation newspaper this morning. And the big story there says Tinubu world leaders, UN, AU, EU, rejects Gabon junta. 6th African coup deeply concerning. What African presidents should do by Oyebade, Keshi, and Ogunasho. We also have your Fasoranti displeased with Adebanjo over Afenifere. Osun APC expels 3 ex-Aregbesola men, 81 others. We also see here Wike, I will deliver Abuja Metro Line next year. Protest in Ondo, Cross River over NDDC board. Of course, we also see here this morning. Okay, I think this is the wrong version of the Nation for this morning. Okay, that was the wrong one. Let's take a swipe at the Punch newspaper. Yes, the Punch. Fear of coups. Fear of coups. AU suspends Gabon as Cameroon, Rwanda retire generals, 1,000 soldiers. We also see here on the front page of the Punch, AU says suspension in force until democracy is restored. Niger humanitarian crisis looms. Niger junta orders forceful eviction of French ambassador, cancels envoy families' visas. Airports expansion. Government to demolish multi-billion naira Lagos private jet terminals. Federal government to evict over 22 jets. Kiamo relocates foreign airlines to new terminal. Page 19 of the Punch is where you can find that story. Federal government, states, local government share 4.37 trillion naira in 6 months, says Nayeti. 12 children, over 60 others die in South Africa building fire. Very sad story. They're all theft. Navy arrest on Polo's men. Security firm kicks. Page 25 is where we can find details of that. Jealous lover kills girlfriend with sledgehammer. Page 5 is where you can find that sad story. AGF, CBN governors threatened with arrest for shunning reps probe. Pages 29 is where you can find details, and that's all we have on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
Well, our next up this morning is the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. And on the front page of Vanguard, you see the kicker there says, coup scare, sit tight, leaders move against their military. Of course, we see Rwanda retires 12 generals, over 800 other ranks. Cameroon reshuffles military, work in response to Gabon military coup. GOC asks disloyal soldiers to leave the Nigerian army. We also see Gabon coup chief to be sworn in as transitional president on Monday. ECCAS condemns Gabon coup, why we should will big stick in coups, on coups. Tinubu insists nobody's interested in war. Axel turned to go back to Niger, focus on disease that bears coup, not symptoms, Atiku tells African leaders. And of course, Falana says poverty responsible for coups in Africa. Those stories are on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. We also see federal government shots MMIA October 1 halts Nigeria Air project. That's on page 15. Nigeria UN signed MOUs to tackle terrorism. That's on page 9. We also see poor governance responsible for banditry, kidnapping in Northwest. That's coming from Shatima. Dangers as bandits vandalize Makati Power pylon. And of course, we also see the last story on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. And scarcity, NNPC directs marketers to Pinnacle as pipelines on the repair. Ipman, that's on page 8. Those are the major stories on the front page of Vanguard this morning.
Going to take our very last paper this morning, and that will be the front page of the Daily Times. The story there on Daily Times this morning says Tinubu government's policies unprecedented wickedness to the poor. Of course, very serious concerns there by NLC, of course. We also see here Dele Momodu's bombs, says Wike TV interview. Okay, Niger coup, Junta orders police to physically expel French ambassador. Mushroom schools, police nab 6 principals, handling over 500 cases in Edo Delta. We also see here as the last story, NHF probe reps to subpoena banks. That's all we have on the front page of the Daily Times, and all that we have as front pages for you this morning. But of course, a plethora of stories, mostly on the coups that have hit Africa. We are seeing the reaction of ECOWAS and the AU over Gabon, coup. In as much as we have Gabonese celebrating that particular coup, of course, the rest of the world is not in support of that particular activity at this time. But that's where we're going to call this particular session on the front pages of the national dailies. We'll take a very quick break, and when we return, we'll be bringing you our interview segment. Of course, it's Friday. We talk lifestyle, we talk health, and let's see how we can have Nigerians who are healthy enough to pursue the conversations and other things that we need to in this country. Stay with us when we return. Rise and Shine continues.
neglected tropical diseases killing people around the world. Neglected tropical disease causing deformities. It's preventable, treatable, but killing people. Why should
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my lord.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories, and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Welcome back, and thanks for still being a part of Rise and Shine this morning. We do apologize for the delays around bringing our guest this morning. Of course, joining us on set is Dr. Aniekeme Uwa, who is the coordinator of the Neglected Tropical Diseases NTD's Control and Elimination Program in Akwa Ibom State. You're going to be asking what neglected tropical diseases are. That's why we have Dr. Aniekeme Uwa joining us this morning to have conversation around the campaigns that they are having in the state to look into this particular situation. Good morning, Doctor. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, good morning. I'm really delighted to be here.
I naturally ask, because of course it has eaten into our time, I'll naturally ask, how was the road?
Terrible, terrible.
Part of why our interview time has really, gone in. Well,
the road is under construction, so lots of potholes here and there.
Okay, so we're talking NTDs, neglected tropical diseases.
Yeah.
What are these diseases about? What is a neglected tropical disease in the very first place, and how rampant are they?
Okay, thank you very much. Neglected tropical diseases are a group of about 20 disease conditions that are found commonly in the tropical and subtropical parts of the world. You know, Nigeria as a country is in the tropical part of the world. And disease conditions that are closely associated to poverty, poor sanitary conditions, poor access to potable water, poor access to quality health care, services. And they are termed neglected because they don't receive the kind of attention other disease conditions receive. And apart from that, most of the people that suffer from these disease conditions are stigmatized against, and they affect the world's poorest. When things affect the poor, most times they are not really given that level of attention, they should get. And apart from that too, these are disease conditions that have a high morbidity, but a relatively low mortality rate, in the sense that they could affect you for a very long time, before maybe it takes your life, as compared to other conditions like malaria, HIV/AIDS, Ebola virus disease, COVID-19 that will, take your life almost immediately. So because of these reasons, they don't really get the kind of attention they should get. And in terms of the control and elimination strategies, these conditions have been divided into two subgroups. You have what we call the preventive chemotherapy NTDs. These are the ones that you can give drugs to prevent and to also control them. So under the preventive chemotherapy NTDs, you have disease conditions like lymphatic filariasis. Lymphatic filariasis is also called elephantiasis. They are transmitted by mosquitoes, and the people affected present with swollen legs. That's why you drive on the road, you see some people with swollen legs, or for the men, their scrotum is swollen, and other parts of the body. Even in women, the breast could be enlarged, or even the upper arm and all that. So those are complications of lymphatic filariasis. Then apart from that, you also have onchocerciasis, also called river blindness. The vectors are the black fly. So apart from causing blindness, it can lead to one having difficult rashes on the bodies that are very difficult to treat. They also have the soil-transmitted helminthiasis or intestinal worms. I'm sure we all know about worms. Worms really have a huge impact on children and all that, and even maternal health. So these are transmitted when the water sources, food, fruits, vegetables are contaminated, they're not properly washed, and they're ingested. So this leads to the people having a large burden of worms in their system, which could lead to them having anemia. I mean, like most time when women are pregnant, when they go for antenatal care, they are given drugs to deworm them. Because when women are pregnant, physiologically their hemoglobin level drops. So if you have a huge worm burden on you, it further drops hemoglobin. It could lead to the woman having severe anemia, which could affect the growing fetus. So it could lead to the fetus not growing maximally. So you have what we call intrauterine growth restriction or retardation. And if it's very severe, it could even lead to the death of the fetus inside the woman. Then even for the pregnant woman, if the anemia becomes very severe, she may need blood transfusion, and it may even lead to her having anemic heart failure and even dying from that. So it shows the seriousness of these intestinal worms. Then even in the growing child, that's why most times you hear, children are stunted, they are not growing up to the height they should grow and all that. Because the first 5 years of a child's life are very important. So if the child has a huge worm burden, the child is not going to grow maximally to his or her full potential in terms of physical growth. It also affects the child's cognitive functions. So the child does not do well in school. So the child grows up, because the brain is not fully developed, the child grows and can't really be very useful to his or herself. They also have the schistosomiasis. Schistosomiasis, those ones are transmitted by water snails. Those ones lead to people, urinating and seeing blood in their urine. And it could become very severe to the point that the person may need blood transfusion or even lead to death. They also have trachoma. Luckily for us, trachoma is not endemic in this part of the world. Okay. So trachoma also leads to blindness. And
so our NTD is endemic. Like, when we have epidemics, it just, spreads out. So in Nigeria, NTDs are endemic. Like you said, yes, poverty is a real factor.
Yes.
But I think something that's really alarming this morning as I'm listening to you speak is the seriousness that should be attached to these diseases, because it's more like they are everyday experiences around us, but they're rarely talked about.
Yes.
And, okay, so one thing you're also really emphasizing is that one that affects people because of the strength of worms in them. Yeah. So naturally, someone would ask, how often should we deworm ourselves? And what are the things that we can naturally do in our homes? Do we have to go to a medical facility to get dewormed? And how often should we do this? So that the little we can do to keep safe, we are doing those things. Okay.
So thank you very much. I was just going through the NTDs. So apart from I'll still come to your question, but apart from the preventive chemotherapy NTDs, you also have the case management NTDs. Under the case management NTDs, you don't really give drugs to prevent those ones. Those ones have occurred. So you now implement certain strategies. Maybe you can give anti venoms and stuff like that. So you have conditions like snake bites, dog bites that can lead to rabies. You have Bruley ulcer, you have leprosy, you have yours, leishmaniasis, sleeping sickness, and even scabies are also part of the case management entities. And prior to this time, you had what we call guinea worm disease, which has now been eliminated. So coming to your question now, for deworming of people, we advocate that push should be dewormed at an interval of every 6 months. So six monthly, you go get dewormed and all that. Then what we do, between the first 5 years of life, the children could get deworming drugs from the primary health centers. Those ones come under the primary health care development agency plan. But for us as a program, we deworm children from 5 to 14 years. Okay. So we have our school-based campaigns where we go to the different schools and we use the teachers. The teachers, administer the drugs to the children who have been enrolled, in their different schools. So we do that routinely, at times twice in a year or at times once in a year, because we get our drugs from the Federal Ministry of Health, and the drugs are gotten from donors, but they are facilitated by the Federal Ministry of Health. Okay. So everything is dependent on the availability of the drugs. But every year we deworm, our children, because in Akwa Ibom, all the 31 local government areas are endemic for the intestinal worms, and the factors are everywhere. Because for instance now, we have a strategy called the water sanitation and hygiene, which could also help to reduce the incidences of intestinal worms infestation, because you need to wash your hands properly. People go to the toilet, people eat food, so they need to wash their hands properly before they eat and all that, because if there's any contamination in the course of you maybe ingesting, you could swallow the ovaries of the worms and all that. Okay. Then apart from that, there's a lot of open defecation in this part of the world. And the wash strategy also helps to reduce open defecation, because we have a high level of rainfall in this part of the world, and since water sources are mainly streams, rivers and all that, people go to the farms and places around the house to defecate, and the rain just falls, washes it off, it gets to the water sources, somebody else goes there to fetch and drink, prepare food and all that, so the vicious cycle just continues.
Okay. So we also meant to have a conversation around drug harms and reduction of drug abuse this morning. We had our guest joining us virtually. I don't know if we can take a question from him this morning. I don't know if he's still online. Of course, we're supposed to have Anedi Akpan, who is the chairperson for drug harm reduction advocacy, joining us. Good morning, Anedi Akpan. Sorry for the inconveniences joining us this morning, but let's take a quick swipe. Even if it's just a question we can handle, then we'll take you again next week. Better conditions. So we are looking at advocacy against abuse of drugs in the society. Today we are creating that awareness. What is this about? We are seeing that a lot of persons are abusing drugs in the society, and your agency and the international community have come together to raise awareness on the part of citizens. Does that give us some intel on that?
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely clear.
Okay, thank you for having me. So we are Drug Harm Reduction Advocacy Network. Advocacy is towards human rights approach to drug use and how we handle drug use in our society. What we know is that the world is having a rethink of how we go about drug laws and how we go about treating people with issues of drug abuse. And the rethink is towards a human rights approach to drug use issues, because it's now recognized day by day that it is not a law enforcement issue, but a public health issue. Public health in the sense that it involves talking about the person you have with you, Dr. OIS, has talked about looking at preventing infectious diseases like HIV, other blood-borne viruses like viral hepatitis, and all of that. And these are really from the use of injecting drugs, and also looking at other risk factors that are involved in drug use apart from injecting drugs. So what we are now advocating for or talking about is that instead of going the route of anybody who is found with drugs, like stated in the NDLEA Act, or known to use drugs is arrested and locked up, we are saying that there's another approach which is called harm reduction, looking at those who are already using drugs, reducing the harms that comes to them as a result of their drug use. And the idea behind this is to keep them alive long enough to be able to make the decision to stay away from drugs. But also, on the other hand, also talking about preventing drug use, looking at integrated strategies, including school programs, including enlightenment of parents, including, pushing for government funding for treatment centers for people who use drugs, at least where they can, people can go and talk about, oh, I've started using drugs, or my friends introduced me to drugs. How do I stop it? Because I'm getting hooked. Because if you look around, apart from the Center for Research on Information and Substance Abuse, CRISA, we do not have drug treatment centers. Apart from not having it, they are not integrated into our healthcare system. So today we are talking about universal health coverage. And yet, if you look at our primary health centers, you look at our secondary health institutions and facilities, and the tertiary health facilities, we do not have a drug treatment program. And this is in a country where about 14.3 million people within the age of 18 and 35 have used drugs in the past 6 months.
So, Anedi, there's a concern that I want you to iron out. When we are talking drug overdose,